To share with Carlos Savello.
The head of the Savello mob, that Carlos Savello?
He's my great uncle.
Of course he is. Of course he is.
Now, there were some quotes that came out prior to season 3 that I've just been waiting to dig into when we officially got to episode 6. A familiar face is apparently going to be showing up, an OG from Power. There were also some quotes that came out last week that was around the ending of Force and Joseph Sikora teasing how Tariq may or may not be arriving in Chicago. But we all know last week they dropped the Power Origins news, and that really was quite important to cover. So I thought, why not save that topic for this week, which in the grand scheme of things has worked out quite well, because of where we now find ourselves on the chessboard with Tommy approaching that lone wolf moment. Joseph Sikora did say prior to season 3 that the first half does a great job in pulling him in all these webs of directions, but the second half is where we start to see those strings snap. There's also a lot to go through with this particular breakdown because it was a big episode 5 that will change the dynamic going forward, and there are also a lot of quotes I want to run through as well. So, the agenda for today's breakdown will be shifting alliances between Jannard, Diamond, Tommy and Shanti, which will then transition us over to some teaser scenes which we're still yet to see, and they'll definitely help us paint the picture of where these alliances do seem to be heading. Then it's the topic and quotes of the big surprise in episode 6, and also the quotes around Tariq St. Patrick, how that could tie into everything, because I do think we're approaching that moment where Tommy may actually need some help and guidance. I personally do think it's way too soon for Tariq to show up, but there are other ways he can be helped by OG characters in the world of Power. We'll definitely get into that in the final chapter of this breakdown, so stick with this video right through to the very end, definitely a lot to go through. But first up, let's get into the relationship and alliances. Now, we all knew this would only be a matter of time. The two brothers being back together, them showing togetherness and strengthening their bond. Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora teased it prior to season 3. They spoke a lot about how Jannard and Diamond's relationship will be a lot more stronger this season, blood being thicker than water. And even though Shanti's been in Jannard's ear whispering, manipulating, trying to get him to turn on Tommy and Diamond, which he has no problem doing when it comes to Tommy, but I do think since their pops died back in mid-season 2, Jannard and Diamond have shown a lot of togetherness. That was the catalyst that changed their relationship. Gary Lennon also mentioned that there were going to be a lot of sets of triangles this season in season 3, and one person will be losing out in each particular triangle, but we as the audience would be surprised as to who. In this particular triangle, I don't think any of us are actually that surprised that Tommy's going to be the one who loses out. I think the fact that Tommy's been treating Diamond more like a number 2, keeping things from him, which definitely does go both ways. But the fact that Tommy's made a lot of moves on his own, we've spoken about the shades of ghost that he's showing in this season, along with Diamond and Jannard strengthening their bond, Diamond thought enough is enough. We even heard him mention in episode 5, he's the head of CBI. We then saw them making a move against the Yardies, which, by the way, he didn't even consult with Tommy. That was all him and Jannard, the two brothers, Chicago Brothers Incorporated, which definitely was a great plan by Diamond. I didn't agree with them doing business with the Yardies after they took a shot at CBI and Kill Wheelie, but the way this was orchestrated, Diamond definitely showed why he shouldn't be messed with. Play by my rules or face the consequences, your choice. In that moment, Zamos and the Yardies paid the price. We've all heard about the old Diamond back in season 1, and I do think this was shades of the old Diamond. He wasn't here to play games. Come on board with our coalition, let's make money together, but there is still a price to pay for your attack. If you ain't down with that, alright, cool, we'll just wipe you off the map. He then took Jannard to go and see Shay. And this is where the intricate triangles start to become very interesting. Shanti's wanted that meet with Shay ever since season 2. She's been waiting patiently, but Jannard decided against sending that text. Now, there are two things to actually look out for when it comes to Jannard going to that meeting with Diamond. One, the beef that it no doubt will create between Jannard and Shanti. When she finds out that he went to go see Shay and he didn't tell her, she is gonna flip. But number 2, something that I didn't actually consider when I did my breakdown for episode 5 was how does Tommy react to Diamond taking Jannard to see Shay? Surely that's going to cause a lot of conflict between Tommy and Diamond, because he knows full well he can't trust Jannard. He recently stepped to him towards the end of episode 2, they've had this back and forth since season 1, and you can definitely still tell there's a lot of underlying tension between the two. So I definitely want to see what Tommy actually thinks of Diamond taking Jannard to meet the Connect. A Connect Tommy put the hard work into, a Connect that Tommy actually reached out to, started to build a relationship with. None of this would have actually happened if it wasn't for Tommy. CBI wouldn't be where they are without Tommy coming to Chicago and putting all these moves into motion. But just like Shanti warned, these brothers are now looking out for themselves, and that's why Tommy's facing an uphill battle when it comes to Jannard and Diamond. Shanti knows that she's already lost out in that particular triangle. That's something she already knows. And Tommy's also about to lose in his, which is why I raised the potential alliance between Tommy and Shanti. I don't think Tommy can trust her 100%, even though she is warning him. And it's because of that smirk when she walked away. She knows what she's doing. She's a very smart woman, a strategic chess player. We saw her on the chessboard towards the end of episode 4. She also mentioned in that particular episode she's back to doing both, boxing and playing chess. And this is all a part of her chess game as well. She knows Junard is swaying more towards Diamond, so why not just create chaos at the top of CBI's hierarchy by feeding a seed of doubt into Tommy's mind? Which is why I don't think Tommy can fully be on board with Shanti, but can they work together in the short term? That can definitely happen, most definitely. And this is another scene we're yet to see, just to further fuel that theory.
I need to watch your back.
She is going to be warning him again, you need to watch your back. We're going to see Tommy come into Shanti's gym, they're going to be having a conversation, and she's going to continue to warn him, which is why I do maintain, in the short term, an alliance with Shanti might just be the right move if he's going up against the CBI. He just needs to keep his head on a swivel and keep his cards close to his chest when it comes to Shanti Showstopper. But again, both of their interests will start to align, no doubt. Now, the topic of this chapter is shifting alliances, especially when it comes to the CBI. So there are a couple of other teaser scenes that I do think fit perfectly with this chapter as well. There's a scene where we see CBI pouring a drink for a fallen soldier and brother. That may be retaliation from the Marquez cartel, someone else, who knows. We definitely know someone important will fall, and it will also most likely cause a divide within CBI. We've got them in Diamond's barbershop basement, where they're all pointing guns at each other, where they may actually have to pick a side.
Y'all gotta pick a side and pick it right the fuck now.
So there is also this scene where Junard mentions they all have to pick, and they need to pick right now. So even though Tommy will most likely be kicked out of CBI, it's not going to be as straightforward as Tommy out and Junard in. There's definitely going to be a tear straight down the middle, and that's going to be a big problem for them. Maybe Shanti, with the help of Raheem, has been able to twist things. Maybe Tommy's been able to cause some unrest. Who knows? But definitely something else to keep in mind when it comes to alliances beginning to shift going into the home stretch. There most likely will be a tear straight down the middle within the CBI. So with that being said, that actually brings me nicely over to Tommy burning down the coalition.
I will burn that motherfucking coalition to the ground before I let them take it from me.
Don't burn it down. Take it back.
Now, like we said before, I do think this basically tells us he's being forced out of the coalition. These past couple of weeks, I've been saying there are only two options. He either gets kicked out or he walks. But based on this from the official trailer and also us knowing Tommy as a character, when have we ever seen him walk away from an organization that he's built? He's put a lot of work into putting CBI back on the map. He's put a lot of work into becoming a connect in Chicago, put a lot of work into building a relationship with Diamond, bringing CBI on board with his vision. He tried to get Walter Flynn to see his vision of them working together back in season 1, and how it's better to work together than against each other. He built a relationship with Shay back in season 2, showed a lot of balls by getting into the room, but it was his brains and his strategy, his plans, that kept them in the room. A lot of blood has also been spilt for territory, a lot of moves have been made which have been orchestrated by Tommy, so I don't think he's just willing to walk away from that. He's definitely put in a lot of hard work. He's almost one step away from being the only connect in Chicago. There is no way he's stepping away. It definitely will be because he's been forced out of CBI. And that's why it makes sense that he wants to burn down the coalition down to the ground. We then have Maria trying to convince him, don't burn it down to the ground, take it back. So she's actually backing him despite her having second thoughts or doubts at the end of episode 5. But that definitely is a topic for a different breakdown later on this week. We'll definitely get into Tommy, Maria, and the impact of her being pregnant, where her psyche is at this moment in time, how Tommy potentially having a baby will change the dynamic of his character arc going forward. Will the baby even survive? A lot of questions and scenarios to definitely consider with that particular topic, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. But can Tommy take the coalition back? Maybe, potentially. You look at the problems that the CBI are having internally, there's going to be the tear straight down the middle, so there may be actually some room to work a few of the guys within CBI. We've also spoken about how a short-term alliance with Shanti may also work to his benefit and to his advantage. Let's not forget, Raheem is also loyal to Shanti. That could definitely be something they could use. Just like he mentioned towards the end of episode 1, you never bet against Tommy, because he's always going to come out on top. He's always going to win. Do I think this time he'll win? It's a very difficult question to kind of answer. It's difficult to answer because as much as I want to back Tommy, we know he's going to be up against it like never before. And it's also coming to the end of Force where he will be leaving Chicago. Just like Joseph Sikora mentioned, he's going to be pulled in all sorts of directions, and in this second half, strings are going to snap. Rick will no doubt also strengthen. That's going to be another problem and a dilemma. I don't think Tommy will have that chain around Vic's neck for much longer this second half of this season. There's also JP's death that will no doubt cause him problems. He's then also going to be kicked out of CBI. He's going to become a lone wolf with not too many people in his corner, minus D-Mac, who he still needs to keep an eye on. Maybe Shanti can help, but again, can you really count Shanti on someone that he can trust? Definitely not. You've also got Stacey Marks, who will no doubt try and get out of Tommy's back pocket. It sounds like Tommy might just kind of need a bit of help going into the home stretch, because he is lacking people that he can trust. He needs someone that he can count on, or maybe even guide him. And this brings me over to those couple of quotes from Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora for episode 6 and beyond. As storytellers of these spin-offs in Power, we have a lot of backlog of characters to use at our disposal. And in this season, I dig into that OG Power 2 or 3 times, and I think one of them will be very super surprising. He didn't say who for obvious reasons, but it does actually come into play in episode 6. So there's going to be a character that turns up in episode 6, and honestly, I have no idea who it could be. Gary Lennon mentioned that there's a backlog of characters that they can use at their disposal, which definitely is true. But when you kind of start narrowing it down in terms of who does Tommy actually have a connection with from his past, there really isn't that many left. 2-Bit is a character that we've spoken about a lot over the past couple of years. When it comes to Power Book 2 Go specifically, he definitely was a character that could have been utilized a lot more in the world of Power. He's certainly a character that has a history and connection with Tommy. They have worked together before, but does he really fit the mold of Chicago, or is he a New Yorker through and through? I'd kind of argue that maybe he's a character that can potentially be utilized in Power Legacy if they go back to New York. I'd love for them to kind of integrate his character back in. But apart from 2-Bit and of course the obvious one, Tariq, who we're just going to come to in just a moment, I honestly can't think of anyone else. I know they made reference to the Italians earlier on this season. Maybe that's something they could potentially tap into. That's something to definitely keep in mind. Because an OG character from the world of Power doesn't necessarily have to be someone that comes and helps Tommy. It could be someone that adds even more problems and pulls Tommy in another direction. Or maybe the Italian story is just simmering in the background without Tommy even knowing. Joseph Sikora did say episode 9 is a false finale. Maybe that's where Force ends, and maybe episode 10 is where they kind of get the Italian storyline going. And with Tommy having to call Tariq, that would definitely make sense. And them then sending it in a new direction before Power Legacy. The Italians were definitely mentioned in episode 1 for a reason. They haven't come back round to it just yet, but I definitely do expect them to do so at some point, and we know the history between Tommy and the Italians. But the second option, a hallucination. You think of surprising characters, and I've said this before, why not have Tommy C. Kanan? He's going to have his back against the wall. It's going to be everybody against Tommy during this final half of the season, where the strings are going to snap. We've seen it when Tariq's back was against the wall back in Power Book 2 Ghost. He saw Kanan when he was in jail. Why not have Tommy see Kanan in a hallucination, where he reminds him of who he is, what he's capable of, that brotherhood, that connection that they had when they were younger, which then translates over to why we later hear Tommy mentioning Kanan a lot more when he mentors D-Mac. So that could potentially be the surprising character who turns up in episode 6. It doesn't necessarily have to be a character that's alive. They could always run an OG character returning in a hallucination. When Tariq saw Kanan back when he was in jail in Book 2 Ghost, he was trying to make Tariq see the entire chessboard. He was trying to make him see what was happening right in front of him. Maybe when things snap for Tommy, maybe he does need his former mentor's voice to kind of just guide him back on the right path. Just like when he heard Liliana's voice at the beginning of season 2. That's something that ignited the fire inside Tommy. Definitely intrigued to see who that surprise character is in episode 6. I do think we need to keep an open mind where it could be a hallucination. It could be an alive character. Again, I made the references to the Italians. Tommy does have a very rich history with the Italians, but so does Tariq. And that's why I'm leaning more towards the Italians, because it is something that does make sense. It is an unfinished storyline from Power for both Tommy and Tariq. Now, in terms of Tariq, I do think it's way too early for him to be showing up. It's episode 6. There's way too much happening in Chicago. There's way too many storylines to have Tariq show up at this moment in time. I do think that definitely will happen, but that's something you definitely save for a episode 9 or 10. Again, going back to the Italian point, just having the Italian story just simmering in the background and then hit Tommy with a crazy twist when he thinks he's just managed to get Chicago on lock. Joseph Sikora did speak about episode 10 and Tariq potentially popping up. He said he couldn't neither confirm or deny that Tariq would be showing up, and with episode 10 they did film it in a way which was done in a few different directions. They filmed it in a few different ways, so they probably don't even know how the show ends themselves. But again, with the way the story seems to be heading with the alliances that seems to be shifting, with Tommy set to have his back against the wall, that call to Tariq will definitely be made in the next 4 at some point. So as the title of this video says, brace yourselves. A couple of OG characters are about to make their return. There may be a surprise for us in episode 6, whether that's the Italians or a hallucination. At this moment in time, as I said before, I am leaning towards the Italians, but they do also keep hinting at Tariq popping up as well. So drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section. We've definitely gone through a lot in terms of alliances shifting, Tommy burning down the coalition down to the ground, how CBI will also have turmoil from within, and also Tommy and Shanti. But the floor is now yours. Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.